Good afternoon. How's everybody?
Good. Can I, just for the record, can I get you say and spell your name, please?
Sure. Nello Altamar. I'll say it English style. You can say it Altamare because I'm looking at Bartley, but it doesn't matter either way. It doesn't matter.
Spelling on the last.
Altomare.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can you please tell us about the Bill 21,
Yep.
what it will mean to lower the mandatory attendance for school?
Well, what it does is that in Manitoba right now it's 7 and under. We're moving it to 6 and under. As far as mandatory attendance in schools, it's important. Get to take advantage of the nutrition program earlier, and it also builds continuity with their neighborhood schools so that they can get in there earlier.
Continuity with neighborhood schools? Can you
Yeah.
explain that?
Well, the school in their catchment area. Yeah.
Okay. So has there been issues with where we see kids are not attending school?
Sometimes, the only issue that comes in place is that with families that are accepting kids into their homes, sometimes they have to provide proof of residence. Right now, that they're actually going to be there permanently. So what this will allow for is that if that kid is staying with that family member, whatever their address is, if it's in the catchment area, they can be in that school.
The age that is mandating
Yep.
the age to attend school to be 6 years old. Have you had concerns? Is there concerns at the government level?
No, this is just mostly just to get this done so that, because most kids enter school at kindergarten, right? So this is just to clear up that area.
How do you make it a right, for children who are 5 to attend?
They have the right to attend school.
So that's nothing new, that's just
Yeah, this is just putting it in legislation now. It's almost like modernizing it so that, reflecting the reality that exists.
so it hasn't been a situation where people like keeping their kids at home for too long.
It's pretty rare. It's fairly rare, but it's something that we want to ensure people know that their kid is welcome.
We've seen the debate in the last couple of days over pronouns and
Right.
protection for LGBT plus kids in schools. Now that you're in government, are you contemplating any changes to the sensitive topic policy, I believe it's called, the sensitivity policy, or any of the laws that were brought in by the former government regarding curriculum and parental involvement?
Well, the curriculum is going to be modernized. The curriculum is already 21 years old in the phys ed health, and we're going to have something to release fairly shortly. No big changes. It's certainly going to reflect the fact that we need to keep kids safe at school and make sure that they're informed about their sexual health.
Anything on the sensitivity policy?
None at all. I think the policy is great, and we're going to move forward with it. Kids need to know what it is about their body so that they can be, safe at school, safe in the community, and accepted at school. That's the big thing, right? For who they are, how they present.
So I clearly wasn't paying close enough attention. Kids age 5 must go to school now? Is that what you're saying?
No, 6 and under. Yep.
6 and under.
Oh, 6 and over. Sorry. Oh,
Sorry.
my mistake. Yes, yeah. 6 and over. Yes. Yes. Mandatory daycare. I would love that.
And just to be clear, the reason for this change is,
It reflects the reality of what's happening now in schools.
and it's not because there have been issues with attendance or getting kids into the classrooms, early on to at kindergarten or whatever it might be.
It's always good to be in a school, and we're just putting this in place so that parents know, the community knows that they can register 6 and under.
So do you go like,
Yep. Oh, sorry. I always get that mixed up. I don't know why. I apologize for that, Danielle.
or like, who's going knocking on doors to say, hey, are there any 6-year-olds here who ought to be in school?
That's a good question, Bartley. I would prefer that, with this piece, school is important for kids, right? They need to be there, with their peers, become part of the community, become part of something bigger than themselves. And we want to ensure that they have that capability. Parents can do that.
I said that with some humor, but whose responsibility would it actually be to go check things out, to enforce that, to go go to, excuse me, ma'am, are you harboring any 6-year-olds? Like,
That part would be a school division responsibility. I mean, would it come down to actually being a truant officer knocking on a door? No, I think it's just the community knowing that they can go into their school, register their kid 6 and over.
so it's going to be up to the division to figure out.
They have all those stats.
Okay.
Yeah, they have that information.
All right.
Any additional questions? So this is more of a statement. It's more of a, we want your kids to get into school as soon as they can because it's the best place for them to be. Is that sort of?
We believe that, yes.
You believe this?
Absolutely.
So was legislation necessary or?
It's necessary. Absolutely. Just what it does is reflect the reality. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm going to bring down Minister Azagora.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the. Oh, it's okay. All right, so I'm here to respond to questions that were raised by my critic today in the chamber. I think that it's really important to address whenever members opposite, certainly in regards to healthcare, stand up in the House and put false information on the record. I think it's particularly important when we're talking about folks who want to work in Manitoba. So I was very disappointed today that the member not only stood up and lied about what our government is doing or not doing with this program. I can tell you it's patently false. We have not cut. I have not made any cuts to this program. But it's also concerning that this is how they continue to treat healthcare workers. This is somebody who reached out for help. This is someone who wants to work in our healthcare system in Manitoba, reached out for help, and instead of the critic doing what she knows she's able to do and what I've encouraged her several times to do, which is reach out to me directly so that I could connect and help this person, she brought something to the floor of the chamber in a very callous way. And that speaks to the previous government's approach to how they treat healthcare workers. You know, this is somebody who obviously wants to work in Manitoba, finding a pathway through a program that unfortunately has wildly underperformed. The previous government had a goal of recruiting 350 nurses to Manitoba by July of last year. To date, we have about 51 healthcare workers from the Philippines, and we welcome and thank all of them for joining our healthcare team here in Manitoba. But that is markedly short of the target that the previous PC government set. And, you know, this is one person who I'm sure probably didn't want for their personal story to be shared publicly in this way. We have a process in terms of standards that protect the public in healthcare. There's something called the Canadian Competency Assessment. This person was unsuccessful. They unfortunately did not pass that assessment. And that is the reason why they were unable to meet the standards to practice here in Manitoba. Now, that's not to say that I'm not going to make sure that I reach out and help support this person or others to see how they can become a part of our healthcare team in the province. But certainly, the approach taken by the critic today was one that is very disappointing. And again, I have to say, highlights the fact that we are keeping this program open. We are welcoming folks from the Philippines to join our healthcare team in Manitoba. But this is a program that was initiated by the previous PC government that by their own standards has wildly underperformed, fallen way short of their own targets. And so I would encourage the members opposite to explain that to Manitobans, explain why it is that your program is wildly underperforming, and also explain why you think it's appropriate and okay to bring to the floor of the House somebody who's reaching out for help instead of reaching out to the Minister for Health directly to support this person. Leave my comments there.
Minister, why were these people rejected?
This person in particular was declined because they failed the CCA exam. They failed the competency exam for nurses to practice in Canada. This is a standard that was put in place as part of the agreement with the Philippines. It's a standard that's in place to protect the public in terms of practicing in healthcare. And it's something that I look forward to reaching out to this person directly. If the member opposite would provide that information, I'm happy to reach out and work with this person to see how we can support them in being a part of our healthcare team in the province.
The allegation appears to be that there wasn't money left over for them to retake the exam. Is that true?
It's completely untrue. I've made no cuts or changes to the funding of that program. Like I said, despite the fact that it's not met the previous government's own standards, I think it's important for us to welcome nurses from the Philippines and healthcare workers who want to work in Manitoba by using that pathway. And so, I've had the pleasure of being able to, recognize that there are many folks, 51 it looks like, who are working in the province well short of the standards set by the previous government. However, we thank them for wanting to be part of our Manitoba community and work in healthcare.
So no changes to the program have been made since you came into office?
No.
Okay. So going forward, we're seeing that a person who was offered a job was unable or unsuccessful in the CCA. It sounds as though they're seeking another pathway for employment here in Manitoba, potentially as a healthcare aide or in something that would be requisite to their skills. So are you looking at changes, or is the shared health looking at assisting people who are unsuccessful in meeting the requirements for the job that they were offered to find some other type of employment here?
I think that's a really important question. That's a question I would have been happy to look into if the member, the critic, had brought this to my attention directly so that we could support this worker and look at the issue. What I will say is that there are standards in place and exams in place that are meant to protect the public. It's important that we respect those standards here in Manitoba. It's also important that we find ways to support people who want to work in healthcare in our province. And so this is a particular issue that I'll be looking into myself directly, but more broadly, again, I think when it comes to questions in terms of why this is structured the way that it is, I would encourage folks to ask the critic for health in the PC caucus. I would encourage them to ask their team why they structured the agreements and structured this pathway in the way that they did. It's something that they need to be accountable to. And I don't think it's treating healthcare workers with respect to bring somebody's personal issue and their ask for help to the floor of the chamber in a really disingenuous way, an unhelpful way, and quite frankly, a not a respectful way. Ongoing pattern that we've seen for the PCs for years in terms of how they treat healthcare workers.
Can you speak to the number of job offers that have had to be withdrawn because applicants weren't able to meet requirements, or they weren't able to meet requirements in the time that was stipulated by the employer?
I can't speak to that right now. I'd be happy to look into that and get that information offline.
Generally, like, is there a pattern where applicants are not
Sure.
being successful
Okay.
in meeting the requirements? Or
To date, there's been a few hundred applicants who have been seeking to use that pathway. And as I've stated, about 51 healthcare workers are now in Manitoba practicing. About 11 of those are nurses. Again, the previous PC government's target was 350 nurses to be working in our healthcare system in Manitoba by July of last year. That is a marked difference from the target that they set for themselves. It is underperforming incredibly. And it's disappointing that instead of trying to be a part of the solutions in terms of how we make healthcare better in Manitoba, the PCs continue to highlight their own previous failures, quite frankly.
At the risk of lobbing you a softball, what do you make of the suggestion by the opposition that your government doesn't want a certain sort of immigrants?
Oh, that comment was incredibly offensive. Every single person, no matter how you identify, where you come from, what your lived experience is, our government welcomes you to our healthcare system. You are welcome in Manitoba, you are welcome to healthcare in our province, and our province's diversity is one of our greatest strengths. Diversity in our healthcare system is one of our greatest strengths. And it's crucial that we ensure that all Manitobans know that healthcare is a place for them. And so it's disappointing, again, that members opposite continue to choose division. They're choosing to lean into rhetoric that is really harmful and hurtful, but our government takes a completely different approach. We are one Manitoba. We want our communities to be unified, and that includes our healthcare community.
can you please just clarify for me, so I get this right, what exactly might your office be doing, or is your office doing to address some of the concerns that you've heard today about a person who was given a job offer, didn't meet their requirements, who's still seeking to join the healthcare system here in Manitoba? What might be extended to them, or what are some of the options that you're considering for people in this particular situation?
I think Manitobans would agree that it is important to uphold and respect standards of practice that protect the public in healthcare. I think that's a really important point to note. That being said, it's important for us to recognize that some folks may need a bit more support or guidance in terms of how they can be successful in taking assessments and tests and meeting criteria. And so I'm always eager to learn ways that we can support healthcare workers in working in our province while also maintaining the standards and the expectations that are set to protect the public in healthcare.
So you're looking into it and you're open to seeing what's possible.
I'll definitely be looking into this particular case for sure. Again, this is something that the member opposite could have brought to me directly, and quite frankly should have brought to me directly. Instead, she chose to bring this person's challenging circumstance to the floor of the House, and I'm willing to guess here that this person didn't want for that personal part of their experience to be made public. But I'm going to reach out, and our team is going to reach out to this person and get a better sense of what's going on. But I can't say it enough. This is a program that was designed and executed by the previous government. Have not made any cuts to this program, despite the fact that it is really underperforming by their own previous targets. And we welcome all folks to work in our healthcare system in Manitoba. If you retired recently, we'd love to have you back. If you left the province because the previous government treated you terribly, come back to Manitoba. Manitoba is a place where we want all healthcare workers to feel welcome because you are. I can't answer that. I can't answer that. This is a program that, again, was designed by the previous government and is wildly underperforming by their own pre-established targets. This is a program that we have made no cuts to whatsoever. This is a program where we will continue to welcome folks from the Philippines to be a part of our healthcare team here in Manitoba. But it's important to also emphasize our government is doing many other things to strengthen healthcare in Manitoba. We're focusing on retention, changing the culture in healthcare so that people are happy working in our healthcare system, recruiting folks who are internationally educated but have been living in Manitoba for a long time, but the previous government didn't bother to create pathways that worked for them. Encouraging new graduates in our healthcare schools to join our healthcare teams across the province. So there's a lot more that we're doing to strengthen healthcare staffing. This is just one pathway that we will continue to leave open for those who want to access it.
What about changes to make it more successful? Is that something that can be done?
This is an agreement that was put in place with the government in the Philippines. This was, again, pre-executed, structured by the previous government, and there are contracts and standards that are set in place.
So there's nothing you can do to tweak it to make it work, to bring more people quicker, even though it wasn't their idea.
This is a pathway that was created by the previous government. I think in terms of why it's underperforming the way that it is, those are questions better posed to members of the PC caucus, several of which remain in their caucus right now and were there previously when these decisions were made. I would encourage the critic to have those conversations with her colleagues to better understand why they structured this and took the approach that they did. They're accountable to that. Our job and my job is to make sure that we are doing what we can to ensure pathways remain open, that we're supporting healthcare workers when they arrive, which we are, and making sure that if folks like this person reach out for some support, that we make sure that they're aware that we're listening and that we provide that support that we're able to. Okay, thanks folks.
Afternoon, everyone. So thanks for joining us this afternoon. So we figured we'd come out and bring up a couple points and see if you have any questions for us, because as you've seen in the House today and the last few days, the Premier's struggling. He's having a bad first week of session with the fact that he is seeing that not only himself is struggling, but some of his senior ministers are struggling within their files as well. So we'll open it up to some questions, and I know that you're going to be probably asking some questions in regards to the $10 billion that the Premier and the NDP government have just recently borrowed. And I think the larger, not a larger value, but I think one point is definitely the $500 million that's going to be in added costs to Manitobans that they're going to have to service the debt.
The minimum wage announcement, it's going up by the legislated sort of bare minimum in October. What do you think of that? Is it enough? Is it enough?
So minimum wage increases. So, almost 6 months ago now, the Premier stood up, and for many months prior to that, the Premier would stand up and say, living wage, it has to be a living wage, has to be a living wage. So the minimum wage is going up to $15.80. So I know that we raised the minimum wage and we put into legislation for the minimum wage to go up by the rate of inflation. The Premier today is in power, could have raised it in the fall, is choosing to raise it this coming fall. You're going to have to ask him if $15.80 is a living wage, or is this just another NDP broken promise from the election?
Do you think there should be a living wage, or it should be a living wage, or would you prefer a bigger increase?
Well, like I said, Carol, we raised the minimum wage, and then we put it in legislation to make sure that the minimum wage would be kept up with inflation. You'd have to ask the Premier on what, we noticed, right? $3 billion in promises during the election. He would go stamping his feet multiple times talking about a living wage. I don't think, is the $15.80 a living wage? I guess we'd have to ask the Premier another broken promise.
So facing
Bart.
the cameras, if you don't mind.
Here we go again, Bart.
What do you make? What do you make? Do you think it was what do you think of the idea it was a missed opportunity in the fall?
A missed opportunity for what? For raising the minimum wage? So here we have a Premier that for years now has been, again, stomping his feet, was upset that we raised the minimum wage, was upset that we did and legislated future increases of minimum wages by the rate of inflation. Here he's got an opportunity to do what he had promised on multiple occasions. He was saying living wage, living wage, living wage, went out, asked Manitobans, said whatever he needed to say to Manitobans to be re-elected, and here we are today with a promise, and again, promise of a raised minimum wage to $15.80 in the fall, when he could have done it this fall. To me, that's seeming like another broken promise by this Premier.
The minimum wage was raised twice last year, including in the fall. So was it
Correct.
realistic to expect a third minimum wage hike in the calendar year?
You'd have to ask the Premier. How's he answering this one?
Do you think someone who works full-time and makes minimum wage should be able to support themselves, can survive on that?
I think in today's economic situation that we're having, not only in Manitoba but across the country, I think many of the things that we put in place for cost savings and measures in regards to the tax cuts. I mean, we talk about raising the personal exemption. We talk about indexing the tax brackets in that, which we are seeing obviously the NDP don't have any plan on that because they're taking credit for what we put into place to try to make life more affordable here in Manitoba. That's something that the Premier is going to have to tackle. And again, there seems to be a bit of a distraction coming from the Premier. He doesn't want to necessarily talk about some of the failings of his cabinet ministers, but also I'd like him to answer where is the $10 billion going that he is now has started borrowing since mid-December in the orders of council. So hopefully all of you have taken the time to read the orders in council.
It sounds like you're supporting the living wage. Is that correct?
Can you repeat the question?
It sounds like you're supporting a minimum, or like not a minimum wage.
A raised minimum wage?
It
So
sounds like you're supporting
so I'm in support of the legislated increase to minimum wage by a rate of inflation, because that's what we put into place. We raised the minimum wage to over $15 an hour, and then put it in legislation. Now, some of you have mentioned, is this a reality or realistic to put it in multiple raises in a calendar year? That's something for the Premier to answer.
What are your thoughts about mandatory school attendance dropping to age 6? Is it bill today, bill 21?
Okay, well, first of all, thanks for the question on anything in regards to do with education and absenteeism, considering it was our government that brought forward the initiative of Go to School, because of course we know that students attending school are going to do far better than those students that are not attending school. The bill brought forward today, I have not had a chance to take a look at it yet or have a bill briefing, but I can say that I believe it was end of January that the minister himself had started talking about, a matter of fact, who was this story done by? This was CBC story done on the 2022 report in regards to the numbers of students who were unaccounted for. And it sounded like at that time the minister had those numbers but was unwilling to share those numbers. So I guess as I get a bill briefing, as we get a bill briefing and get into the bill debate, then that's when we'll be able to answer your questions a little more specifically.
Your education minister, reducing, lowering the mandatory age of compulsory attendance to age 6, is it significant? Is it going to be a meaningful change for anyone in Manitoba? Or the minister characterized it as better reflecting reality. So I'm wondering if they can make a difference for anyone.
I think any change that we do in the education system makes a difference for people and children, and I think that again is I guess going to come out from the bill debate on what stats and what information the minister is making some of these decisions on. So I'll take a look at the bill. We'll get a bill briefing from. Maybe the minister will do that, but the department will for sure. So we'll get into some of those questions.
Are you concerned about packs of 6-year-olds roving in the streets?
Pardon me?
Are you concerned about wild gangs of 6-year-olds roving in the streets?
Am I concerned about packs of 6-year-olds in the streets? That is a great question, Bart. Actually, I've never really thought of that. Are you talking about having to then go to school or not attending school?
Just making light of how someone would enforce such a thing.
How would you enforce such a thing? Well, you know what? That's a very interesting topic, because when we did come up with the Go to School strategy and started looking at how we were going to go about, to take a word from you, enforcing this, it's a very tough thing to enforce. And I think definitely, working with the school communities, working with the education partners, of course, working with parents, is a start on how you make sure that you're seeing and showing that attending school is a positive thing.
Ms. Clark, Cook. Excuse me. Pardon me, I definitely know your name. Minister Asaguera was here just a couple of minutes ago, and they said that what you said on the floor was incorrect, and stated that these person failed an exam and that there was no changes to how you were. They also tried to do for bringing it there and not, and also kind of, what do you react to that dismissal of the concerns?
I would like to correct a couple of things that the minister said. Contrary to their assumption, this is actually about a group of nurses, not an individual. In the documents that we tabled, I redacted the exact number of individuals because I was concerned that could identify the individuals who have asked for anonymity because they are scared of reprisal from the government. Secondly, on the assertion that I should have brought it to their attention prior to question period. The problem with that is that if individual nurses have to contact the Minister of Health individually to get hired in Manitoba, that's a big problem. Secondly, this group of nurses has been in constant contact with Shared Health for months. And if the minister is unaware of what's going on in their own department, that's on them, not on me. I would also like to note that the cut to the Philippine nurse recruitment program was identified back in December when the government identified $5.8 million in what they called savings from this program. And on the subject of the CCA failure, the clinical competency assessment, the issue there, and it's noted in the emails that I tabled and that we'll happily share with any of you if you want to see them, they were told by Shared Health, first of all, that this wasn't a pass or fail exam and that they could retake it. After they took the exam, they were strung along by Shared Health for 3 months, who told them that they were stuck in discussions with the government, and then their job offers were abruptly withdrawn. Then the nurses said that they would be happy to come to Manitoba as healthcare aides, and the government wouldn't allow them to do that either. And as I understand it, coming here as a healthcare aide doesn't require you to pass the CCA. So this is the role of opposition. These nurses have been trying to go through proper channels and were quite deep into the recruitment process, working with Shared Health for months. And they didn't get anywhere. They want to come here to work. Manitoba needs every nurse and every healthcare aide that it can get. We have a group of nurses, internationally trained nurses, who are desperate to come here and work in Manitoba, and they're being actively blocked by the current NDP government. Any other questions?
I did ask about alternative pathways or options that the government might make available to accommodate people who don't pass the CCA or who don't otherwise meet requirements in the job offer. And it sounds as though that's not contemplated. And the minister said that the program is being delivered as it was designed by the former BC government. So are you asking for changes? Are you wanting to see the current government make some concessions in standards or in make changes to the pathways that were available under this program initially?
So last month I had the opportunity to go to Portage la Prairie, and I met with some of the Filipino healthcare worker recruits that came to Manitoba. They are trained as nurses and they are working here as healthcare aides. So that pathway should be open to them. And I would say that if there are internationally trained nurses who can't, for whatever reason, be certified as nurses here in Manitoba, why wouldn't we take them as healthcare aides while they work towards becoming a nurse? That seems very common sense to me.
So you would like to see, so if somebody was offered a position as a nurse, wasn't successful potentially in meeting the requirements for their job offer, they should be given another job offer as a healthcare aide.
Absolutely, we need healthcare aides too. Yep. Any other questions on this?
Yeah, when you suggested that the NDP only wants a certain sort of immigrant, do you really believe this government's racist?
That comment was in reference to a comment that the Minister of Immigration had put on the record, I believe, last fall. And we can find it for you if you're looking for it.
I mean, that minister clarified that was about a certain class of worker or a class of immigration applicant, forgive me. But given the way that you have the privilege in there, it might sound to somebody just tuning in and watching this on YouTube that you're suggesting that this government is racist. So I have to ask you, do you believe this government is racist?
I think their refusal to allow these workers to come to Manitoba leaves me with questions about why. What I actually think the reason is politics. They don't like this program because it was brought in by a PC government, and that's why they've shelved it. That's what I think the real issue is.
So do you adapted the number of group of nurses? Can you, is it a dozen? Is it less than a dozen? Or is it
More than a dozen, less than 3 dozen. More than a dozen, less than 3 dozen. We'll say that. I truly don't want these nurses to be identified because they still want to come here. And they said this in their correspondence as well. If they're blackballed here, they'll try to go work in another province, and that's Manitoba's loss, unfortunately. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon.